Thank you for joining A Shark's Perspective, the podcast with subject matter experts in marketing. There are a lot of great ideas that are lost because people don't articulate and communicate them well. I mean, think about this. How many great ideas have you had that needed to be communicated well internally? What about your advertisements? Are your ads sticky and do they resonate with people enough to repeat it and get it? Jeff Tippett is a speaker, author, founder of a PR and communications firm, and he's a subject matter expert in persuasive communications. And on this episode, we'll discuss some of the best and most persuasive ways to communicate your big thoughts, make your ads sticky, persuasion versus manipulation, and even a little bit about Einstein's theory on communications, in that if you can't explain something simply, then you simply don't know enough about it. So let's listen in to Mr. Persuasion with a persuasive shark on this episode of A Shark's Perspective. Jeff Tippett, thank you so much for joining us today on A Shark's Perspective. If you would, please tell us a little bit about your background and your story thus far.
Can I thank you for the opportunity to share with
You
you and with your audience today. I greatly appreciate it. Background-wise, I grew up as a kid with entrepreneurship in my DNA. I remember knocking on doors, getting gigs, raking yards in the fall, mowing yards in the summertime. But then I took it to the next level, and I would hire my friends to come fulfill those contracts for me so I could go on to the next house and knock on the next door. So I think it's just part of who I am. It's like having this internal DNA of just needing to start things. When I was in existing companies, I was the entrepreneur. I was starting something new. And I served in several advertising PR firms. Loved it, loved working with the clients, but there was still just something in me that wasn't happy. And I needed to take the next step. And so I decided I wanted to launch out. I wanted to specialize in digital work for political candidates. Is how I first began thinking what I was going to do. So as you can imagine, when I tell you this date, it was the worst time to launch a company. I launched in October of 2014.
Wow.
So that's an election year with a November election. So I launched it at the worst time possible to do a political consultancy. However, to my surprise, the first week of putting my shingle out, I signed a half dozen clients, which gave me the faith and the courage to keep on going. And then within the first quarter of my company's existence, I signed my first international client, this little company out of California called Airbnb.
Not bad, not bad. So when, and we're going to talk a lot about persuasive communication today, but how did you apply, persuasive messaging to some of those clients, when you started helping frame the messaging they have to their customers and to politicians out there?
So earlier on, most of the work was digital work where I was crafting messages that would appear to very highly targeted ads as well. So we would drill down to the exact voter, even sometimes matching IP address, depending on how large the campaign was. And our role was to create ads that would convert over to getting people to get out and vote. We would first go through the whole thing of making sure they understood the platform, and then we'd switch over to get out the vote.
So persuade me, if you will, with how persuasive communication can change your life, your career, your PR issues, and more. And how do we sort of become the Ronald Reagans of our era? And before Democrats jump off the show, I mean the nickname of the great communicator. But what are the sort of secrets that you've learned and help people to become persuasive communicators?
My big bold statement is this: is that we all live or die based upon our ability to persuade. And with that, it doesn't matter to me if you're a politician, if you're a public activist, if you're the CEO of a company, if you're a sales manager, if you are a middle manager, if you're in charge of marketing, if you answer the phones for a company, or if you don't want to live alone for the rest of your life. Mm-hmm. We all live or die based upon our ability to persuade. And in my book, the way that I framed this up is I first began to help people understand the difference between persuasion and manipulation, because sometimes we think they're synonymous and they are so polar opposites. And I think once people understand the difference between manipulation and persuasion, it really frees us up. And persuasion is actually leadership. It's showing leadership. So help spread those out, help people to understand the difference. And in the book, I walk through messaging, how you craft a simple message, how we capture attention, how we make our messages sticky so they resonate with people, talk about making a connection with people, talk through call to action and how we position our messaging, and then a few little tips here to help jumpstart that as well.
So, in particular with sticky, this is something I talk about a lot on my podcast. Is omni-channel approaching campaigns, driving sort of the same message across different channels, but we do this a lot in display and search where we're doing a lot of dynamic messaging, but with the words themselves, a lot of people look at how we trick different words to optimize them to do better. But how do you make a message sticky?
Well, it's an important question. And what we want is we want this message to resonate. We want it to bounce around in people's heads. Like long after the conversation, long after they have seen the ad, we want something to stick in their head so that they're constantly recalling it. Sam Horn said it this way. He said, if they can't repeat it, they didn't get it. So how do we say it in such a way that it's there, that it's inside of them, and it's who they are? And there are brands who've done a great job with this. I think of things like Got Milk, right? It's been used for 21 years, starting in 1993.
Where's
or how
the
about
beef?
this one? Where's the beef? Yeah. Or how about this one for 97 years? Good to the last drop.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Melts in your mouth, not in your hands. Or I remember this one as a kid, and some of you others might remember this one too. How about this? Plop, plop, fizz, fizz. Oh, what a relief it is.
Sure.
43 years. So that's part of the value of a sticky message. So how do we get there? How do we create? Repetition is obvious, and it's a really good way to create a message that's sticky. Find words that you can repeat, and I listed like about a half dozen different ways in the book of different ways of using repetition that some people don't even recognize as repetition. Alliteration is another excellent way of creating a sticky message. And since you brought up politics, and we're not getting political at all, I'll use this one. How about repeal and replace?
Yeah.
That was extremely sticky. It was extremely effective there. The R and the R, and it was easy. And the thing is, the Republicans using this message didn't even have to define what replace was.
Exactly.
All they had to do was say repeal and replace. Things like rhyming is another great way. I talk about different types of rhyme in there as well. And things like cadence as well are great ways to help your message become sticky. And typically what I ask people to do as we work with clients is, let's start looking at all the words that are there, then find the words that are most important. Which words do we want to emphasize in the main point? Which words help make an emotional connection? And then which words already have a known facts behind them or an experienced facts behind them that I can draw upon? So I can say one word and it's going to pull something from their past that they can connect with.
Yeah, and if you think about it, regardless of what you think of his politics, Make America Great Again is a marketing dream of a message, because I think of how many copycats out there. I was at a performance marketing conference a few months ago, and you would see, make direct mail great again, make SEO great again.
Yes.
It was things like that. It's like a jingle. It sticks in your head forever. So,
and one of his most recent one was mobs, not jobs,
yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So jobs, not mobs. Sorry, I said it backwards. Jobs, not mobs. That works. Like hate is politics. It's not about that. What this is about is his ability to communicate and his ability to persuade. And the way that he says these phrases are powerful.
So when you think of, and you speak at on a ton of podcasts, you speak at a ton of different conferences and meetings, and if you think about the types of demographics and changes that you'll see in these different groups, whether it's age, gender, whatever, and if you think about that from not only a personal level, but also from a brand's perspective, how do you think of it from the different perspectives of how you persuade people with the tonality of communication that you use for different types of groups that fit into those different demographics?
Well, this is a hard one for me. Part of it is because of my background. I have a master's in English, but I will have to admit that there are a lot of devices in the English language that a lot of our younger people like and relate to that are so much non-standard English, but they work.
Mm-hmm.
And so, the old grammar professor in me wants to pull this thing in, but I guess really what we're after is what works. So it may not be standard grammar, but the way that they use language, the way that they change up phrases, the way that they say things differently, especially this millennial population, when you're trying to move them and persuade them, and more of a connected type feel, more of a less structured type feel versus like when I go in, for example, to speak with lobbyists. I mean, I am very structured when I speak to lobbyists. I'm very much driven by facts when I speak with them.
So when you're trying to help people become better communicators and better persuaders, is the is a bulk of that taking a clear message and making it sticky? Because that it may be on occasion that a stickier, a soundbite, as you know, can resonate easier, but it may not be the right message. So how do you make your message persuasive and sticky?
It's one of the chapters in my book is called "Crafting a Simple
I've got
Message."
to get this
Um,
damn book.
and in this chapter, I hope you do. I need
Yeah.
to send you a copy.
Uh,
Um, I opened the chapter here with a quote from Albert Einstein, who says, "If you can't explain something simply, you don't know enough about it."
Agreed. Yep.
And this is extremely important. Like when it comes to things like I do, like in policy work and things of that nature, because a lot of these things that we work with, they are extremely complicated. And guess what? Our audience doesn't care. Not only do they not care, they won't pay attention to a very complex message. Now, I do like to use an inverted funnel approach with a lot of messaging, where what I want to do is put out just small bits up front, but
Hmm.
they're designed in such a way to whet your audience's appetite so that they ask for the next bit of information. So, for example, when people ask me what I do for a living, I say I speak professionally, and I stop. Almost without exception, the next question back from people is, "Oh, well, Jeff, what do you speak about?" And then I'll say, "I speak on persuasive communication." I stop. And then they'll come back and say, "Oh," almost always, "so you teach people how to manipulate for a living. That's what you do." And I just laugh with them. But the point here is, I don't go on for 5 minutes about what I do. I give them enough information to whet their appetite, the basic of the information there. And what I want is, I want them now engaged with me. I want them to ask me for the next level of communication because they want it for themselves, not because I'm pushing it on them.
Are there some other, great persuasive communicators that have kind of been mentors to you over the years that were well-known figures we would remember?
Um, I think like going back to like grad school work, some of the writings of like Ralph Waldo Emerson have been important to me. Um, of course, Zig Ziglar,
Yeah,
it's
exactly. That's the one
been
I was thinking of.
huge to me as well. I quote him a couple of times in my book as well. And in fact, I wrote a chapter based upon my knowledge of persuasion, but a big part of his messaging as well. And I open with a quote from him where he basically says, "We'll get everything in life that we want if we just help enough other people get what they want."
Hmm.
And in this chapter, I talk about our goal here of helping other people find their win. And when, as persuaders and as communicators, when we're focused on our audience's need and what they want, and this applies to marketing as well, like when we understand the gap that our audience has, when we understand the need that they have, whether it's health, wealth, or relationships, when we understand that and we are focused on solving that for them, we're no longer selling to them, we're fixing problems for them, things that they want, and we put the focus on them, then we're able to persuade so much easier.
Agreed. So, a lot of marketers and PR and communication, all people have to communicate up their ideas internally, and externally, whether it's a campaign, a new piece for their tech stack, a customer acquisition email, or just some general idea. And I sort of liken it back to the FedEx commercial where the guy in the back corner voices an idea, but there's this swarmy guy up the front who re-says it with a little bit of a sales guy twist, and he tries to get credit for the idea. And it's something that I often speak to on how people can and should communicate and change big ideas selling up internally. It's difficult for most people at any level, but especially important when you're trying to advocate and advance an idea that you feel passionate about for your brand or for whatever the cause. So, what's your advice on how someone should persuade that internal group, if you will, on that next big marketing idea?
Let me toss this out there. And this is one that we don't often think of when it relates to internal communications. Oftentimes, we only think of this for people that are the CEO of the company or a person who is self-employed.
So true.
But let's take this to the internal, and let's talk about being an industry expert. Each person that's within an organization, if they're in a marketing department, if they're an advertising firm, they have a role, right? They have a job responsibility that they are responsible for. It may be like in language, it may be in development, whatever it happens to be, whatever their project is. If they set themselves up to be the industry expert in that particular field, it will help them persuade so much more. It will elevate their status within the group as well so that people trust them more. And they can do things like write, they can produce white papers, they can write books, they
Mm-hmm.
can be on podcasts. There's so many different things they can do to exhibit themselves as an industry expert. And what that does, once again, within the group, these people are highly esteemed as being the go-to person, the guru, the subject matter expert, and their opinion matters more.
Yeah, one of the things that I told a peer of mine just recently is the person that can articulate an idea the best with the clearest direction, with numbers that make sense, is the one who will win the battle, if you will. And I think, unfortunately, people don't take time to map out that part of the process and know how to communicate it well. They can spend all day in an Excel spreadsheet, but if they can't communicate that idea out simply, to your point earlier, and articulately, and make sure that they show a clear direction, there are a lot of great ideas that just get lost because people can't articulate them well, and that's unfortunate. So
That's exactly right, and that's exactly why I started the book with this chapter on a simple message. So in North Carolina, prior to our work, there were blue laws in effect that said that on Sundays you could not purchase alcohol before noon. The thought was that you were to be in church, not out drinking. Well, we got hired by the National Restaurant Association to go in and to build a grassroots campaign to change that law. And we framed up this campaign and we called it Free the Mimosa. Hashtag Free the Mimosa. And it immediately connected with people's pain. We had all been to a restaurant and tried to order a mimosa or a Bloody Mary, or we'd gone to a retail outlet and we had tried to purchase beer for an afternoon game only to be told no. So it was very simple in that this was about Free the Mimosa. People could connect emotionally with it. They understood the value for themselves. Now, was this the law about? No, I mean, this was so complex. This was an opt-in. This was internet sales. I mean, it was so complicated, but we just made it extremely simple. We distilled it down to only what they needed to know, and that is what brought them to action.
hashtag beer in church. That's what we need. So
I'm with you.
So what's the one piece of advice though that you really kind of give to people out there sort of starting to build their own, motivated, persuasive communication strategy? What's the advice you give to people coming up into their career roles as well?
I think that a big part of this, and this was one chapter that my editor had me go back and write. And he came back and said, Jeff, you've talked so much about this area, but you've never really gone through and defined it. Is this important to you? And the area was the word trust. And I was like, is it important? Absolutely. Without trust, nothing else matters that we talk about. No other chapter in my book is of value whatsoever if you don't have trust. And so a big part of it, what I would offer to people is understand how you build trust with people around you, with your audience, with your online group, whatever that looks like. Understand what it takes to build trust over time with people, because without that, nothing you will want to do will succeed.
Couldn't agree more. I tell people all the time that trust for a marketer should be in all caps. If you're going to look at
yes,
people focus way too much time on the like and the no, and not enough on the trust. But so Jeff, you speak at a million places. What advice do you give to people who want to get out there on the speaking circuit, with or without a good message?
First of all, is don't promote yourself as a speaker. Those
Agreed.
days are over. What we do today is we present ourselves as industry experts. People hire experts. I am an expert in persuasive communications. That's my lane. So pick a lane. My lane is in persuasive communication. It aligns with my background, my professional work.
Agreed.
It aligns with who I am as a person, as well. So this all aligns. Pick a lane and then stay in that lane. But build out what you're good at, what your expertise is, and then people hire that. Now they expect you to motivate and bring a message, but they do hire you if you are an expert.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. You can't be a great professional speaker if you don't have a great message. So, and I'm glad you said that.
Prior to the collapse of the economy, like you could go just make people smile and laugh, and they'd pay
Yeah,
you $50,000, right? But then once the economy collapsed, none of us are speaking, and then very few. Then after that, what's happened now is that people are back. There is money to hire speakers, but they want message and motivation both. You've got to give people good content.
couldn't agree more. So then, tell me about the name of the new book and when it's coming out.
My new book is called Unleashing Your Superpower: Why Persuasive Communication is the Only Force You'll Ever Need. And inside this book, I make the argument and I prove out it's the only force that you'll ever need in your life. It'll be available in January, and on my website will be all the information as we get closer and closer to January.
Awesome. I'm going to drop this in as kind of a little bit of a shift, but I'm always a sucker for this part of your story. But I know you've got kids that you had by your marriage, but you also adopted a young girl from Haiti. And I wish, if you would, just to tell us a little bit about that journey that brought the two of you together.
Absolutely. It wasn't a plan, it wasn't a dream, it wasn't a lifelong goal. It was one look at a photograph of this little baby who her mother was a translator in Haiti that my father met. She was a ninth grader in an English speaking Christian school, and she happened to get pregnant. And so her school gave her this choice. They said, get rid of your baby or drop out of school. Kenneth, I can't even imagine facing a decision like that as an adult, much less as a ninth grader, but trying to understand what would be best for her baby and understand for herself. She made this decision to give up her baby for adoption. And I don't know what happened, but when I saw the picture of this baby and I saw her eyes, I knew that I was to fulfill this and adopt this baby. What I didn't know what was going on in Haiti at the time. Haiti was in devastation. President Aristide was being run out of office, and the country was in total turmoil. I had no idea what I was getting into with Haiti. It was the first time in my life, Kenneth, that I'd had a gun pointed at my head or I'd had a machete held at my neck. It was the first time I'd had to flee city for my own safety. And it was the genesis, the beginning here for me to really understand the difference between manipulation and persuasion. And here's how I learned it. My Haitian attorney emailed me one day and he said, Jeff, at at worst, your adoption is over. At best, you're on an indefinite hold. The government had shut down, and the person that I needed to sign this next document was not showing up. No one was showing up in that office. They had not shown up for weeks to that office,
Mm.
and they weren't showing up. So I was devastated. I was, it was like the end to me. I'd already been there several times at this point. I had taken her money, I'd taken her clothes, taken her food. I was in love with this girl, and then to be told that it's probably over. So I got up, and devastated that night. The next morning, I got up to put my plan together, and I decided to fly to Haiti. And I went over and I stayed with my attorney, and this was my plan. Every single day, I got up, my translator and I, and we walked down to this office from my attorney's son, walked to this office where I needed this document signed. And I was sat there all day long waiting for someone to show up, only to go home disappointed that they hadn't shown up. And about 2 weeks, this kept going day after day after day until finally, one day, someone showed up at the office. And you can imagine what I'm going through. Like,
Oh
I've got
yeah.
all these emotions happening, right? And I've been there. There's not a lot of English speaking people to start with. So I've got all this stuff inside of me.
Hmm.
I am upset. I am furious. I feel helpless. And I start going off on this person. And in retrospect, what I was doing was I was using the word I, me, and my
Hmm.
constantly in this conversation. I need you to do this. I need to complete this adoption. This is my baby. And I kept using those words over and over. And this government employee could care less.
Sure.
His eyes just glazed over. And so I knew that I had to change something in what was happening here. So I drew on the limited knowledge I had of Haitian culture, and I knew that Haitians loved their babies, that they were jewels, they were precious to Haitians. So I turned this around and I made my conversation about her. And I made it about her and how at this point her mother had put her in an orphanage, how she didn't have the funds to care for her, how she was sick, how she needed medical attention, and then framed it by saying, I'll be the one to do it if you'll sign and give her this life back. And within 10 minutes, the document was signed and I was out the door. But this is the deeper lesson that I learned, Kenneth, other than just what was happening at the moment. You see, I went into this thinking that because the country was collapsing, my arch enemy here, the villain of my story, was Haitian bureaucracy. They were the ones stopping me from getting what I wanted to have done. But what I learned was the real enemy was my tendency to manipulate people, to twist arms, to do whatever it took to get things done that I even damaging relationships to get done the things that I wanted to do. And it was the first time in my life that I had a glimpse of what persuasion is about and what manipulation is
Sure.
about.
Well, you opened your heart and your home to a child that wasn't your own, and now is completely your own. And I think the world of anybody that helps a child through adoption. So you're good in my book. So Jeff, we've come to that time, and it's now time to ask you if you're ready for the 5 most important questions that you're going to be asked today.
I am so ready for this.
All right, here we go. So to a North Carolinian, the Outer Banks or the Biltmore Estate?
How about Ann? Can we say both? I have a place at the coast, so I am very much so a beach lover.
There you go. Wonder Woman or Captain Marvel? The new Captain Marvel.
Let's go with the new Captain Marvel then.
Well, apparently, yeah. After Stan Lee passed away, you've got to.
Yeah, that's right.
Persuasion or motivation?
Persuasion, because I think persuasion drives the motivation as well.
Nice. Nickname versus name: Mr. Persuasion or Mr. Tippett?
Call me Mr. Persuasion. That makes me smile.
And the most important question that you're going to be asked today is biscuits or cornbread?
Well, I have chili in the crock pot all day long that I cooked for my family tonight. So right this moment, I am actually leaning to cornbread. Now, if you ask me this question tomorrow morning, I might tell you biscuits. But right now, let's go with cornbread.
As long as you don't have gravy on your chili, we'll be good.
Chili.
Jeff, then where do people find out more about you, follow you, connect?
They are welcome to check out my website at jefftippett.com. It's JEFFTIPPETT. And if you get any close misspellings to my name, I've got Google ads out there. I'm quite sure my website will pop up for you.
Jeff, thank you so much for being on A Shark's Perspective today.
Thanks for the opportunity. Thanks for trusting me to share content with you and your audience.
Appreciate it. So there was my conversation with Jeff Tippett, a speaker, author, founder of a PR and communications firm, and a subject matter expert in persuasive communications. Let's take a look at 3 key takeaways from our conversation with him. First, Jeff's big bold statement, and I quote, is, "We all live or die based on our ability to persuade." And with that, it doesn't matter to me if you're a politician, if you're a public activist, if you're the CEO of a company, if you're a sales manager, if you're a middle manager, if you're in charge of marketing, if you answer the phones for a company, or if you don't want to live alone for the rest of your life. We all live or die based upon our ability to persuade. Second, how do you make your message sticky? And how do you apply that same thing to your campaigns? How does an ad resonate in your head? If they can't repeat it, then they didn't get it. Think about these examples. Good to the last drop. Melts in your mouth, not in your hands. And where's the beef? Even political slogans, regardless of your politics, can be sticky. You probably remember repeal and replace, make America great again, and jobs not mobs. How about memorable hashtags, short and to the point? Furthermore, find words that you can repeat and also consider things like alliteration, rhyming, cadence, tonality, and the actual words themselves that can help make an emotional connection. It makes your messages more powerful when they try to remember your brand. Third, in the immortal words of Zig Ziglar, remember that you can have everything in life you want if you will just help other people get what they want. And when you go so far as to understand the gap that your customers have, then now you're helping them fix their problems. Remember, even as communicators, we should be focused on the customer first. And advice for everyone is to learn and understand how you build trust over time with people. And without that trust, nothing else matters. Remember, trust should be in all caps. Got a question? Send me an email to kenneth@asharksperspective.com. Thank you for trusting me to share some persuasive content with you. Find your own superpower, but consider, if you will, being a super parent to a needy child. Give the gift of adoption. And know that if you do, you will change the life of that child forever in a better way. And trust me, it will change yours as well. And join us on the next episode of A Shark's Perspective.